Hey guys, so I wanted to do a video about how I prep my board for pouring. So this is 1/2 inch MDF from Home Depot, and it comes in a 2 foot by 4 foot board that we cut with a jigsaw halfway. And then I just go in and I draw the shape that I want. So this is going to be a 2 foot by 2 foot end table, and the next step is we're going to cut it out with the jigsaw. So this is our jigsaw. It's just a cheap one from Home Depot, Ryobi. This is the speed here, and we keep that on high, and then this is precision, so we usually keep it on a 1. So there's the blade, and it goes up and down, and then this here can adjust the angle of your cut. So we're about to cut into our board. The first thing that you need to make sure is that there's no table or anything underneath your board for when you're cutting. And if you see, he's going to be trimming it in at an angle, so you need to make sure that it's well supported and that you have it straight. Don't bend the blade. Obviously make sure as you go around the board that you rotate it so that you don't cut into your table. So as you can see, there's pieces that are going to come off the edges of the board. Make sure to stop your jigsaw so that you can put those down so that they don't hit you in the feet. And then of course use your hand to support the board and keep it from tipping. So I went ahead and I drew my center that we're going to cut out. This is a Milwaukee drill, and we have a 3/8 inch bit, wood drilling bit that he put in it. So what we're going to do is drill a hole down through the middle so that we can get the jigsaw blade in there, and then we'll cut it out. So the reason he did it off to the side of the middle is that way he can get the blade in and go around the edge. So again, when you're cutting that out, you need to make sure that nothing is underneath it. You could always use an empty bucket without the lid to set your project on top of, so that way there's a hole in the middle that you're not going to cut into. So now my project's completely cut out, and my next step is to sand these edges slightly so that there's no burrs or sharp spots on there, and that way it'll be nice and smooth. For this I use whatever sandpaper I have laying around. This is 100 grit. It doesn't matter what kind of sandpaper it is. So obviously the lower number grit is going to be really tough. You can see the grains in this, and the higher number is going to be super fine, so it doesn't really mar anything. So I would probably recommend first sanding the edges and the little burrs from the saw, probably between 100 and, if I had to guess, probably 600. This is just for an orbital sander we had laying around, but it does the same thing. So what I do is I turn the board on the edge, and you can see here it's a little rough, so I just go over that a little bit. If you do too much on the edge, you will file that into a line, which you don't want. Then I scuff the top a little bit, just make sure it's smooth, and then don't forget the top edge a little. You don't have to go crazy. As you can see, I'm not really putting a whole lot of effort into this. Very light. And I do that all the way around my project until I'm done. I just finished up sanding all my edges, and now what I'm going to do is just lightly sand over these pencil marks so that way when I paint it white it doesn't show through. That way I don't have to use numerous coats. And you don't have to do it 100%, you just need to get the darkest parts off. Just really easy. The thing is with MDF, it's a pretty soft wood, so you want to make sure that you're not marring it too badly. Again, my grit is 100 grit, which is pretty high, so it can really do some damage if I'm not doing it easy. So now, because it's so dusty, I'm just going to use this, you know, tiny little broom to get all the dust off. And you can see it's all over the table, so you want to clear all that off before you start painting it. Otherwise, the paint won't adhere very well. It'll adhere to the dust and not to your project. So this is the back of my project, and what I'm going to do is tape up all the edges so that way all the drips, I can peel them off later rather than having to sand them. This is just like painter's tape for automotive purposes because we have a shop. So what I do is I want to make sure that it hangs off this edge a little bit, and then I use the razor to trim it. That way it doesn't come up the sides. So you want to have a good lip. So you can see the line here, and I just make sure that it hangs over a little bit, but mostly you just want it to cover where the drips are going to go. So you do that all the way around and make sure it has a good seal on it. So I went ahead and flipped my board over, and you can see the tape is on the other side now to protect the bottom from drips. And so what you want to do is go ahead and take a razor and cut easily along this line. The reason you don't want it to fold up onto the side here is because when the resin drips this way, it'll either adhere the tape to your project or it'll pull up on top of it and it'll leave a line when you pull it off. So I do have cardboard underneath it because obviously you can see that it gets cut pretty easily. So again, you just want to take it along there with some pressure, and then you can see you can pull it away and it's a nice clean line. And little bits, like if you can see this little tiny bit right there, I might take it off or I might just push it underneath. So you do that the whole way. And if you wind up slicing the board on the side, which is easy to do because it's a soft board, you can just go ahead and sand that with some sandpaper and smooth it out. So here you go. I had already done the back here. So it's a nice clean line. And this is now the finished product. So you can see the sides have none, but it goes just right there. And you may have a little extra pieces like this that may fold down, and I would recommend trimming those again so the resin doesn't pull up on that. But you just want to go around and make sure that everything is adhered very well and that it didn't come up, you know, while you were sliding it around or anything like that. And so that's what it looks like. And our next step is flipping it over and painting it. Now you may wonder why I didn't do it here, and that's because I do glass and rocks on the inside, and the worst thing in the world would be to have this bright yellow stuck underneath the rocks and the resin that coats those rocks later. So I don't do it there. Instead, what I'll do later after is sand that down if there's any drips. Alright, so I flipped my project back over to the side I'm going to pour on, and this is the paint. I've talked about this before in my other video. I use this pretty much in everything. I use it in my resin with mica powders, I use it plain in my resin, but I also coat the top of my board with it, so that way this brown doesn't come through. If I use a transparent color, it'll be nice and white. And I just use a basic brush. You can use house paint. You can use any kind of paint, even with a roller, and just roll that on. I've seen people use spray paint, just a cheap $1 bottle of spray paint. So you just want a nice, clean, colored surface to work on. So I just go ahead and I squeeze it directly on my board, and then I will move it around until I get a nice, smooth, painted surface. You don't need a lot, you just need to cover it. And obviously smooth out the lines because that'll add texture underneath your resin that you won't want. And then don't forget to do the edges here, like that. And I also do the inside where I'm going to put my glass because I don't want brown to shimmer through my clear glass. So it's like that. Okay, I'm all done painting my project white. It's a little streaky right now. It dries pretty quick, and it'll be one solid white slate so that I can pour on. Make sure you take your brush and go around the edges and make sure there's no drips. And then also, it's a lot easier. You can see there's a gap there. I just use caps from brake cleaner, just something to elevate it a little bit. That way the paint doesn't gather at the bottom and the cardboard sticks to the bottom of my project as it dries. I also want to add that some people use primer or kills on their MDF boards. I don't really find a need for that. Some people have issues where the resin will soak into the board and it won't look the same when it dries. Again, I haven't had that issue one bit, and I would assume that would be more present in like using plywood or something like that. Again, I paint it white just so it's a nice solid color for pouring on. My board is now dry. It's nice and smooth in one color, so now I'm just going to draw my design on there. So here's my lines all drawn out, and this is my plan for what I'm going to do when I pour. So basically what I do is I'll go in and pour a line basically here, and then I'll use a popsicle stick to fill it out to the lines, and then I'll fill it back in. And that's how I keep my lines so clean. I don't do a whole lot of blending. I don't really have much experience with that other than a bunch of fails. So yeah, that's the extent of my prep of my board. If you have any questions, drop a comment. Otherwise, share, like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.